I'm really thankful to see each of you here this evening. We didn't know, how many people would show up, but I know there's a lot of other things that you could be doing on a Friday evening. Maybe more fun things, or maybe things with your family. But you're interested in this. You're interested enough that you're going to make that sacrifice to come out here. So just reminiscing over the past couple of years, it was in I believe it was January of 2023 when Roger had contacted me, and he's like, "Hey, you want to get together for breakfast?" And he didn't even tell me why. He's just like, "Hey, you want to get together for breakfast?" And so we got together, and he was talking about this school idea that him and some other men were talking about. And and we just, I would have never dreamed that here we are, almost 4 years later, not even 4 years later, and we're talking about, we're looking at a rapidly expanding school. We're looking at, 50-some children the first year, 80-some this year, and we're talking about building a building of all things. Like, things are happening fast, and I just think about the, if God was not in this, this would not be a reality. So to me, it gives me a lot of confidence to see how God has come through in so many different ways as we, many decisions that we've had to make, and just the way he's worked things out. And it gives me a lot of reassurance to see him working, and to just, just be surrendered to his plan and just help where we can. And so really excited about this evening. There's few influences in our children's lives that have greater impact than school. And so why wouldn't we be very intentional, and why wouldn't we be super excited about giving them the best education possible when we think about setting them up for success in life, whether it's in a career, whether it's like, whatever they do. There's few greater influences in that. And so I think that seeing you guys excited and engaged, it means a lot. So what we got going on this evening, I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown. So we're going to have 3 speakers, and I'll introduce each one. So you already know who a lot of these are. But Eric Lehman, first of all, he's our school administrator. So it's hard to find somebody who believes more in the vision of Upward than Eric. And then he also, not only does he believe in the vision, he also makes it happen. So he puts in the hard work to actually make it happen. And, he's very dedicated. So he's going to be one of the speakers. The next one is going to be Marlon Gaiman. He's our board member. He has a lot of experience in commercial construction and renovation. His expertise and industry connections are invaluable as we consider a project of this scale. And then we have Del Martin. Some of you may not know who he is. He's the newest addition to the board. So what we were looking for was someone who's had financial expertise and experience, who could provide wisdom, balance, and stability to the Upward board, especially as we think about going into expansion and building projects and things like that. So some things about Del. So he's a pastor at Trinity Brethren Fellowship Church. He's the general manager of Franklin Storage and Logistics, so he's got 30 years of management and accounting experience for them. He has a degree in accounting. He served as a treasurer for Children's Aid Society, which is a nonprofit social services organization. So we feel very confident he's the treasurer at our school, and we feel very confident to have someone like him managing our money. So one interesting thing at the last board meeting, we had a financial report, and Del, bless his heart, was going off on a tangent about something that didn't add up to 3 pennies. There was 3 pennies that were off, and he was getting worked up about this. So we were rubbing it in throughout the entire meeting about that. So so you can be sure that your money's safe here. So what these people are going to be talking about. So Eric's going to be talking about, so in the context of the building, Eric is going to be talking about why we need it. Marlon's going to be talking about how we build it. And Del is going to be talking about how we pay for it. And then also, Del is going to be hosting a question and answer session. So get your questions ready to ask them, whatever questions you have. So he's going to be hosting this question and answer panel. And the panel there is going to be Eric, and it's going to be Marlon. And then they're going to be joined by Jim Kreider, who's another board member here, who has extensive experience in the construction industry. So they're all going to be up here answering your questions. with Dell moderating. Make sure I didn't miss anything. But yeah, that should pretty much do it. So yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, well, good evening. Glad you guys showed up. It's good to see the support here this evening. And as I think back on 2 years ago, almost from this month, we were at Chambersburg, Dunkard Brethren, as a group of guys that had this idea to start a school, and we really weren't sure how well received it was going to be. We weren't really even sure if it was going to go. And a crowd very similar to this one where it's like, you think you pretty much know everybody, and you're like, well, if that's the only people interested, maybe it's not going to go. But it turned out there's a lot more interest than what was in the room that evening, and I definitely sense that with this project as well. But we're going to talk a little bit tonight about why a building like this would be important, and why a school. We receive a lot of different questions. Over the past while, as we've grown, the question has just continued to arise of how long are you going to be at Mount Rock? Is this the home forever? Is this where we're going to be for the foreseeable future? And how many kids can we have here? How many kids? How many students can we have here? And the numbers we keep looking at when we look at how many students we can do there are probably just around 130 students. And to paint a picture for you, in our first year we had 53 students. This year we're at 84 students, and the wait list is continuing to grow for next year. And it's really exciting to see those kind of numbers start to come in, but it does begin to ask the question of how long can we be at a facility like this. And something that I find interesting is that we started with 9 churches last year. We grew to 13 churches this year, represented in the student body. And I believe there's already 2 other churches that are signed up for next year. So we're looking at potentially next year having over 100 students with 15 churches represented. And so I want you to keep that in mind as we go throughout tonight and we take a look at why this vision could become a reality. Mount Rock has been nothing but fantastic to work with. We signed a 3-year contract with them. They've been very gracious. But this year we're starting to wade into more and more shared space. Shared space is classrooms that we use throughout the week, and then they use for Sunday school rooms or for evening activities. And it begins to be the game of shuffle. We shuffle things around in the classroom. We get ready for the weekend, and the teachers, they start to, hey, do we have to do this every week? Do we have to move this? And we do. And they, like I said, it has been a great working relationship, and we're excited to continue that into the future. But I think as we look to grow, we're only through 10th grade this year. I think that we could really use more space down the road, and questions begin to arise about what does that look like. Another kind of example of that is when you look outside of Mount Rock, I'm sure those of you with students or grandkids there, you notice that there's not a lot of green space. We're a little short of places for kids to run around. Great gym, which is fantastic for winter months, but throughout the summer or the nice months of school, it's a little more challenging. There's no ball field, things like that. So there are some limitations as to what all we have going on there. So the opportunity, James, if you could just go ahead and go to the next slide there. This is the potential there in your packet of what a campus on Byers Rd would look like, and this is definitely a big jump from a facility that we're at now, but it allows for a lot more things, and some things you can see looking at that. One is there's lots of green space. There's ball fields. There's room for building all kinds of things. We talk a lot about what is the in-house career tech and trade school going to look like. We have a lot of students that want to do trades and get into trades over the next few years. And what does that look like? Well, we can do some things there at Mount Rock, and we can get creative, but ultimately we're a little limited on what all we can do. But if we had a facility like this where we could build some of our own classrooms, perhaps a garage or a shop where we can have shop class, the opportunities are endless on a facility like this. And that's something that I really hope that we can kind of cast that vision of just a lot more opportunities being here. Even something like science class. I had a teacher the other day that said, hey, I have this experiment. Where can I do it? And I was like, that's a great question. I'm not sure where you can do that. And I was like, can you do it in the kitchen sink? And he's like, well, I would maybe do it in my own kitchen sink, but I'm not sure I want to do it in the school's kitchen sink. So ever since then, I've kind of been thinking about, like, our relationship with Mount Rock is a little bit like cooking in someone else's kitchen. You can make the food, you can do it, you can get the job done, but it's just not quite the same. Just not quite the same. And I hope that we can kind of cast that idea a bit. So the opportunities there, like I said, that probably wouldn't all happen at once. We'll turn to the guys that are the building experts. We can't ask for everything all in one shot, but can we create a lot more opportunities for our students? I think we can. And there's times where I look at this, I wake up and I'm like, man, this idea, we've been thinking about this as a board pretty much since the day the school got started. Of, hey, what is this going to look like? But we recognize that for a lot of the community, this is probably the first time that you're really maybe seeing something and thinking about it, and it can look like a really big project. And there's days I wake up and I'm like, that's a really big project. Are we really going to be able to do something like that? But I am encouraged when I look at projects that have happened before us. I even, just walking in tonight, thought about Chambersburg Mennonite here, noticed that, we're in the original part. If I'm piecing the building together right, I believe we're in the original part here, and at some point there's an addition put onto this church. And I'm sure there were people that were like, that's a big project, that's a lot of money. But have you guys ever tried to book Chambersburg Mennonite Gym? It is constantly booked. It is a really hard place to get into. Somebody had a vision to create this space, and generations later, we're benefiting from it. And that is part of the idea that we're trying to pitch for a new school, is that it'll be a community center in some regards for all of the supporting churches. I think of some other local businesses or schools. Shalom is a school that many people have attended over the years and benefited from. We may not like that the way that things have gone there, and some of the original founders were like, until we had a chance to even send our kids there, things had changed and things had moved on. But I've talked to several of the guys that were on that board, and I said, is this too big of a project? And they said, absolutely not. We signed for the land that Shalom was built on for $40,000, and we didn't even have a bank account set up. We had 30 days to set up a bank account and get the money. They said, if God continues to open doors, continue to walk through them. So I just want to cast a little bit of a vision here and ask a question. What does 10 years from now look like? If you have a second grader in school, in 10 years that second grader is going to be a senior. And in 20 years, that second grader is going to be looking for a place to send their own children. Time moves on quickly. Decades can go by pretty quickly. In 10 or 20 years, we're going to look back and we're going to ask ourselves, why didn't we build it? I've heard that question. In fact, I was going through my laptop just the other night, and I found a document called Franklin County Christian School. It's a document that I went home many years ago from Dan Lehman's house after a conversation talking about starting a school. This was probably heading on 10 years ago, and I started typing up how we would do this. And I had it labeled Franklin County Christian School. Didn't quite develop into Franklin County Christian School, but it was something close. And I just had to think, we were like, man, why didn't somebody do that 10 years ago? Well, here we are 10 years later, and the school has been started. The vision's been planted, it's taking root, and I really think that it's time to give it a home. We can grow, and we can be very successful at Mount Rock, but I think to take it to the next level, we're going to have our own facilities to really mold the school into what we want. So something I'll leave you with is the idea of an old Chinese proverb that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best is today. And I think that that's something that we should take to heart when we think about a school. We'll have the construction guys kind of break that down here in a minute. But there's definitely a need, and we continue to see the need, and we continue to have inquiries into how many students are we going to be able to take. And there's certain grades that at this point we don't have any more room to grow. So I would just encourage you to think about the idea that the school is taking root, and it really is time to give it a home. Marlon?
All right, thanks, Eric. So, he mentioned about 10 years, a lot can change. In 2 weeks, November 7, I was standing, if I stand like this, in this exact spot, I got married right here 10 years ago. In 10 years, I did not think I'd be standing here trying to talk about a school. I didn't know what 10 years down the road was going to look like. A lot can change in 10 years. And for most of us, in 10 years, right now you have children in school. In 10 years, you might be grandparents or, whatever stage of life you're in. For me, in 10 years, I now have 3 children, and my oldest is in school. So the whole 10-year plan is very different depending on what stage of life you're standing in. So in looking at Upward and the school and just the overwhelming support that the school has been blessed with over the last 2 years, I think everybody on the board has been blown away by the support and the generosity of the community and everyone that we've been in contact with, and that's been phenomenal to see, phenomenal to be a part of. And so as we look at the possibility of maybe continuing to walk through doors that we feel that God is potentially keeping on opening for us, I just wanted to tell a story a little bit about how we came by the land there on Byers Rd. So this was January of this year, January of 2025. We were talking about this, and one of the board members had seen a piece of property that a local farmer had that thought could potentially be a building lot for a school. So we made contact with the farmer completely unprompted and just said, hey, we have this idea. Would you have any interest in selling some land to put a school on? Obviously, brand new idea to him. He's like, well, we're going to have to think about it, pray about it, and see where it goes. So we went through January, and February, I got a call one night right before a board meeting, and they said there's 102 acres for sale on Byers Rd. They think the bids need to be in by the end of the week. This was a Tuesday. They think the bids need to be in by the end of the week, but they thought maybe we would be interested in it for a school. So I go to the board meeting, and I'm like, hey, there's some land on Byers Rd. Should we look at it? Well, we're looking at 102 acres. Obviously, we're not coming up with money for 102 acres in Franklin County in 4 days. And so I reached out to the realtor at that time, and I'm like, does the bid really need to be in by the end of the week? And he's like, yeah, that's when they're wanting the numbers in. It was a sealed bid. And so we reached out to a few people, a few local farmers, and we're like, hey, would you be interested in buying this, possibly selling some to the school? Everyone that we talked to had other projects they were in the middle of, and nobody was interested. So in February, we said, well, it is what it is. It's fine. It's way too fast anyhow. We're just going to let it go. So cut to May. I was approached by another farmer that says, hey, I'm wanting to possibly going to bid on some land on Byers Rd. Is the school interested in buying a few acres to make it a little more feasible for him to be able to afford? And I said, well, how many acres are you thinking? And he said, well, he don't know, 15 to 20. And I'm like, okay, that's about the exact amount of acreage we're looking for. So I said, well, yeah, we'll consider it. We'll talk about it. Took it to the board, and we're like, yeah, we're definitely interested. We definitely want to explore it if it's an option. It's a long ways away. The farmer's one of 8, 9 guys bidding on this tract of land. So what's the chances? So we go through the whole bidding process again. Obviously, we have nothing in this. We're just talking with the farmer, going back and forth. And They submitted the bid, and on Friday, he called me and said, well, his bid got rejected. They're selling it to a developer, and it's a done deal. So I messaged the board, and I said, hey, the land on Byers Road, that's done. It's getting sold to a developer, which we were all assuming. A developer is going to outbid a farmer on most days of the week. And I remember one of the board members distinctly saying on the chat on Friday afternoon, he said, well, hey, if it's meant to be, it's going to happen, and if it's not going to happen. So Monday morning, I get a call from the farmer, and he says, hey, I just got a call from the realtor. The developer the owner, something went wrong on the developer's side. The developer fell through. I'm back in. And I said, oh, okay. So there is a chance. So that is the story of how that land ended up coming up for an option for us to even attain and be able to get a hold of. And I just feel like through that whole process, we originally looked at that land in February. It sat there for another couple months, and just through the open doors that God provided, we thought we didn't have it, then we did. And just seeing all that happen, it feels like if we don't walk through this door, maybe we're doing a disservice to the community. So that's why we're continuing to try and push forward where we feel like there's an opportunity and start exploring the idea of a new building. So as we look at the prospect of a new building, obviously there's a lot of moving parts that goes into a building with dealing with townships and local codes and everything else that it takes to actually get a building up out of the ground. So if you want to go to the next slide there, James. So this is a set of building plans that we had drawn up. This is very preliminary drawing, just a kind of a shadow of what we might hope someday to be able to build. Obviously, once, we'll have to go through a design process, make sure everything is per code, but this is a sample size drawing of what we're hoping to do. So hoping to have, obviously, rooms for each grade in the school, possibly some extra science rooms for Eric's benefit, to be able to maybe do a science experiment in a dedicated room. But just to be able to house and be able to afford space for the community and the demand that we're seeing for the school as we move forward, and the growing interest that we have. As he said, at Mount Rock, there's not a ton of green area. My son came home today with a hole in his pants, so thanks to the blacktop, I believe. So all of that to say that the whole building project is definitely going to be I'll say a slow process. It all takes time. If you think you're going to need a building in 5 years, you're going to have to start heading that direction today, so that in 5 years' time you can hopefully, have something down the road. So as far as a timeline for the building, right now I drew up a rough schedule, and it's there in your handout. According to that schedule, the building would be up by 2029. So obviously that's a lot of things have to happen between now and then, but our most immediate goal here, we're planning on settling for that land on Byers Road in mid-December here. And that is our initial immediate need there of the $450,000 would be for the land for 18 acres. We settled on 18 acres of land there on Byers Road. I don't know if any of you have seen the land or drive past it. If you're coming in off of 997, go down Byers Road. It's on the left-hand side of the road. There's a kind of a rundown shed there right along the road. That would include the acreage that we have, and it runs to the back of the property there. So potentially looking to have a building up in 29. I've talked to multiple builders. They thought they could build a building like this size in roughly 9 months. A lot of times permits can take upwards of a year. And so just to be able to start heading that direction, obviously it's going to take a community effort. All of us here on the board know that we as a board are not building this school. All of us in this room cannot build this school. It's going to take a community effort and community finances, community help to make this dream a reality. And Eric's analogy of a tree, planting a tree, I would love to have, some shade for my grandchildren to sit under. If we're looking at the school as a tree or as a shade tree, what can we do to help the future generations to come? And we see this building, as Eric said, a community building, a place for a gym, a place for family gatherings, a place for a ball game, whatever it might be. We see this being a huge benefit to the community and to the local churches that are supporting the school as well as, the community center itself. So yeah, I think that's about all I have. Dell is going to get into the numbers here in a little bit more detail and try and lay out, a potential game plan there. So I'll turn it over to him.
All right. It is good to be here this evening. And what is wrong with chasing 3 pennies? I don't know. You could talk to my wife and she'd tell you many other stories about chasing of pennies, but we'll save that for another time. So when I was approached to come onto this board, I was told they wanted someone with the experiences that I have. They wanted someone that maybe had some wisdom to give to them. But bottom line, it all pointed to, they were looking for someone who was older than they were. And I think it was to kind of temper their vision, their excitement, their energy, and their passion for this project. And I'm not sure I'm the guy to temper that, because I tend to get excited about these things too. But the fact that I do have several years on them, I think they're depending on me to, if they get out over their skis a little bit, to slow them down from a financial standpoint. Because bottom line, you can plan all you want. You can have the vision, but if you don't have those pennies, if you don't have that funding, you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. So I'm here to talk about a little bit about how can we pay for this vision that these young guys have in their heads. So we put together a little timeline here of how much money we need, when we need it by, and what that's going to cover once we get that. So first and foremost is the land purchase, which Marlon talked about. We're looking at $450,000 and $450,000 for settlement by December 25 here. So what we have done, we have gone out to 2 lending institutions. We've contacted Orrstown Bank. We have that in motion. We've also contacted Anabaptist Financial. And we have verbally been approved for the amount that we are going to need for that settlement by December 10th, I believe, of 25 here. So it looks like it's going to be very favorable to go with Anabaptist Financial. The interest rate we're looking at with them is about 5.7 to 5.75. They require a 30% down payment, so to speak. We need to show that we have 30% of that $450,000 in our checking account. We do have that 30% and then some, pretty good sized cushion beyond that. So we are prepared to receive funds from Anabaptist Financial to cover everything that we need, that $450,000 by December here in just a couple weeks. What we'd like is to come out of this meeting here tonight. And first and foremost, our land purchase is the number one goal. I think there's an envelope that you've been given with your packet, and we are looking for pledges, donations, checks to come in by November 15th. And that amount that we borrow from Anabaptist Financial, maybe we won't even need it. That is our prayer for tonight. But we do have a backup plan. So we encourage you to take this home. If you're not prepared tonight, to fill this out and hand it in. Take it home, pray about it, and see what you can do for the land purchase. This envelope will also be coming in handy down the road for the next phase. So you kind of see there the December. I explained what the goal is there coming up here in December. February, we'd like to move forward with some of the building design and site surveying. That's going to take some funds as well. All these dates beyond December of 25, they are simply up there as goals. We will proceed as we are financially able to accomplish these goals. So this may look aggressive, but only time will tell, and the Lord's opening doors for us will tell how fast we move through this. August of 27, this is when the land purchase has been behind us. We are proceeding with building design and everything. So in talking to Anabaptist Financial, we've also told them, the land purchase isn't the end. It is just the beginning. Obviously, they anticipate a building coming onto that land. Right now, in preliminary numbers, we are looking at about a $6 million project for the facility. And so what that means, Anabaptist Financial is also requiring still the 30% that we would have in hand before they would loan us the remainder. So we are hoping to have pledges have money in the bank, $2.5 million by August of 27. That is our goal. A lot of work will need to be done between now and then, a lot of conversations, a lot of participation. So just to break down that number, so if we have the 2.5, we're looking to borrow $3.5 to $4 million, probably more in line with the $4 million. You never know what's going to be needed beyond that target of $6 million. And again, that is very, very ballpark preliminary numbers. So just to break down that $4 million and what we could potentially be borrowing, that's going to be about a $28,000 a month mortgage payment, $336,000 a year. How can we fund that mortgage payment? So probably our number one goal is to reach out into the community. We talked about community. It's not just the patrons, the parents that are sending their children to Upward. It's going to be a community effort to build this school. So we're looking for engagement from local businesses in the community that have a relationship with the school in one form or another. We're looking for churches to participate. We're looking for grandparents, uncles, aunts, anyone that's in your sphere of influence. We're looking to have conversations to, number one, generate that $2.5 million, and then two, once those monthly mortgage payments are due, being able to fund those. So our goal of that $336,000 per year needed for the mortgage payments, we are looking to fund that about $150,000 from those community engagements and relationships. That is our goal. Right now, our rent payment that we're paying to Mount Rock is about roughly $5,000 a month. So you combine what we're looking at from area businesses, community businesses, churches, organizations, and what we're currently, with the current tuition level that we are at, enrollment level, about $5,000 a month contribute towards that. So that leaves about $10,500 per month that we're looking at one way or another of how we're going to fulfill that. This is just a scenario the board put together and we're throwing out there just to consider is, you can look at all these numbers and hear all these numbers and you say, how is that going to happen? So we kind of broke it down to some numbers that may make sense to how this may happen. So currently there's about 40 families with children at Upward, and you break that $10,500 per month down into the 40 families, and that's about $262.50 a month. So we're not saying that this $262.50 per month comes from those 40 families, but maybe it's their sphere of influence, like I mentioned. Can you encourage family members, aunts, uncles, parents, grandparents to participate in this project for the children, whether they're grandchildren, great-grandchildren? So when you break it down into numbers like that, it starts to sound like, hey, maybe we can pull this off. So I'm just throwing out some round numbers. These are not solid numbers by any means tonight, but just to give you a scope of the complexity of the project, the magnitude of the project, and how it could be broken down and financed. I mentioned the envelopes. Again, we're not looking necessarily for you to fill them out this evening. If you want to and are able to, we will gladly accept them tonight. But November 15th is a date we would like to have some feedback if the Lord has laid on your heart to participate in one way or another through the many options listed there on that envelope. A scripture verse comes to my mind from Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 9. It says, "A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps." We as a board, we can have a vision and we can make plans, and I believe it's prudent that we are making plans. But this will only move forward if God is directing our steps, each step of the way. And so I've been a part of the board for a couple months now, just been in on a couple board meetings. And if it hasn't come through tonight, these guys are excited about this. They are passionate about this, but they also recognize that this is going to be a work from God. A work from God if this is going to come to fruition. And so there's much prayer in our board meeting about this project and also individually amongst the board members. So we ask that you would participate in prayer with us for this project. If God wants this project to happen, that he would make it possible, not only for the construction and all the plans that we're making, but also the finances, what we're going to need to be able to pull this off. So we're going to have a time of questions and answers. I believe Eric, Marlon, and Jim are going to come up here, have a seat here, and we're going to let you fire questions at them. And they're going to have an answer, one way or another. So Jim, Eric, Marlon, if you come forward, give these folks some time to think of some questions you may have. I'm new enough at this that I have a few questions myself, in case you don't, but we're going to...
James, you want to move to the next slide for us?
What we're going to do is allow you to ask a question. I will repeat the question so everyone can hear it. I believe we're also recording this session as well. So open it up to the floor at this time for any questions that you may have. All right. How many students do you anticipate in this building that you put up on the screen here?
Yeah, so I believe that was, we did some quick math for 13 grades at 15 students per grade, which is where we kind of anticipate that number being. We're right around 200 students, so the building, I think there is designed for 225.
Good question. The question is, are we building big enough?
It's a good question. I guess, in all honesty, we're not sure. I know that there's very few buildings that when you build them, you say, we wish we would have built smaller. But I do know in looking at these drawings, both Jim and I together said we got to make provisions to be able to, I'll say, easily be able to add on. So we're wanting to design a building maybe with an end wall and a hallway where we can easily just maybe knock the wall out and add an extra wing with relatively not disrupting a lot of the rest of the building.
I will add something to that. When we went to the original drawer for these prints, we told them 25,000 square feet. That building up there is 33,000 square feet. So as we described what we wanted, there's a couple things we went back and forth, and then they showed up with 33,000 square foot, and we're like, that's 8,000 square foot more than we asked for, and they're like, well, this is what you asked for. And then we start looking at things like the width of the hallways are only 8 and 9 feet wide. Is that wide enough? So there's a lot of work that needs done to those prints. It's a long process.
All right. So have we had conversation with Green Township, and are they on board with this project?
So there have been some contacts with Green Township already. So when we were working with the other farmer, that land was in a different township than this one is. And through that process, we found out that in Franklin County, a school is an approved use anywhere on any land. So there's been contact with Green Township. We are using Frederick and Seibert for the land development plans. And they're the people that drew the first concept here for us. They're very familiar with things like water and sewer and that kind of stuff. And so we had Frederick and Seibert walk the land with us before we signed a purchase agreement and talk about is this feasible? Are we buying at the right place? What all is going on here? Marlon reached out to Green Township. I think Frederick and Seibert might have reached out to Green Township. So Green Township says that we're a go. Now, we all know when we actually go for the permits, things arise, but we feel like we have a piece of ground that we can work with in a township that's willing to work with us.
All right, I got a question. How do you plan on building the building? Are you going to have a general contractor and a construction company do the whole thing? Will there be any volunteer help? Welcome.
Initially, we've had multiple conversations about this. Obviously, a project this size is not really designed for volunteer help per se, as far as getting the shell up. We did, I've talked to multiple GCs about a project this size, getting some quotes and things. We did possibly explore the idea of maybe managing part of it, having a GC get the shell up, and then maybe Jim or I or somebody else from locally here can maybe manage the interior. But on a project this size, this is Marlon's opinion, I think it's probably better handled and would flow a little smoother if a GC that builds these every day runs the project and manages it, from start to finish.
All right, this is a question maybe they're afraid to ask. Is this going to affect my tuition price?
My personal opinion would be that this should not affect tuition price. It's really my goal, as we started talking about this, like Eric said, from the very beginning of school, that this would be a community project amongst the entire Anabaptist community that's supporting this school in the Valley. So we're looking not to just like make this up from tuition. My goal in the end, probably, if we look 20 years down the road, is what I call a net neutral financial building, meaning when the building is paid for, that there's enough money coming in from maybe renting the building and that kind of stuff to pay for utilities and that kind of stuff. And so how we get there from here is going to depend on community involvement. But to answer your question, no, I don't think that tuition, we're not going to raise tuition to pay for the building.
Is there any concerns in regards to the traffic impact on Byers Road and also on 997?
Do you anticipate any traffic impact on Byers Road and 997?
Yeah, so I spoke with Green about that, and they said they would do a traffic study based on the amount of kids that would be at the school at peak times, 8:30 and 3:30, pick up and drop off times. So yeah, they said we would need to do a traffic study and pay a tax to them for that peak traffic times, which I'm assuming you're familiar with as well. But from the people I talked to, I'm like, what's this tax look like? Like, how much are we talking about? And they're like, well, we got a quote of $100,000, for this. And it's like, well, you go back and you negotiate, and, somebody got it down to 10 or 15,000 or whatever it is. So I don't really have, cost-wise what that might look like. But yeah, there will be a traffic study need to be done and worked through.
That's a great question, Jay, because one of the other townships that we were talking to specifically mentioned Shalom, and they were like, hey guys, whatever you do, don't get in the position that Shalom's in right now, where every time school lets out or is going in, the traffic's spilling over into 11. It can be a real mess down there. I live down there. So if you look at the land drawings, you'll see that we have the building set off the road pretty far. Now that's preliminary. We might want to move it a little bit closer, but one of our concerns is that all traffic for the full capacity of the school is off the road during pickup and drop-off times.
Was there any thought put into purchasing a building before we started down the road of planning on building?
Yeah, there had been some thought, especially with Chambersburg Area School District. Obviously, they have, if you're following along, they're planning a building project there in Green Village and closing some of their elementaries. So there are going to be actually some school buildings available in the county, and most of them are actually already leased out, or at least a verbal agreement on lease. We did talk to a few people connected to the district. So I think they're closing 4 elementaries, and at least 3 of them were already taken by other organizations. And the one there in Green Village, that wouldn't really be that far from our current location, they want to hold on to as a potential maintenance building of some sort. So we've looked at some other school buildings and even some other buildings with a good shell there. Once you start looking at doing all the deferred maintenance, I think that's the correct term there, it's a lot of money there too for something that really isn't quite what we'd be after. A lot of those elementaries or shells of buildings wouldn't really have a great gym, which is a big part of what we're thinking about as far as in community draw, is having a good gym with a large kitchen right there. You can imagine the events that you can have, everything from wedding receptions to family gatherings and choir tours, all the above. So we looked at some other options, but nothing has hit home quite like a new building would.
Is that option still on the table if the right opportunity came along, even while pursuing the land purchase?
That's the chairman of the board's decision.
Back to the traffic flow. What does busing look like at a new facility like this? I know that's a loaded question and wide open, but what's your vision for the busing in a new facility like this?
So I guess my vision for busing doesn't really tie to the new facility per se. Eventually, my goal is to be able to control busing in-house and be able to manage that through UCA upward and not have to totally depend on, be at the mercy of the district. So that the busing situation, at least for Chambersburg and Shippensburg, my dream for that is independent of the new building.
Even before the new building's here?
Yes, that's my goal. Obviously, that's a work in progress. I did have a meeting with Chambersburg District here 2 months ago, maybe now, hoping to find out some more confirmation of information, I guess, in January. So leading up to next year's busing, I'm trying to get some things in line to hopefully make that a little bit smoother for everybody involved. Yeah, that was another thing with busing. Right now in Mount Rock, we're 1 mile into the Shippensburg district. So there on Byers Road, we would be in Chambersburg district. So we would be then bordering a lot more districts than we are in Shippensburg. We could still catch Shippensburg, Gettysburg, JB, Greencastle. It kind of opens the door to a lot more options, I think, busing-wise, in that location, which is also another thing that was attractive to us with that piece of land, because we knew we wanted to get the new building or the new school, wherever it was, into Chambersburg district, so we could have a little bit further reach on the busing side as well.
Okay, here's a question for one of the two guys beside me. What does it look like down the road to rent this building, and how's the facility being set up to possibly rent?
We did not rehearse these questions before, so good question. I know I've talked briefly to a couple people about this, and we've talked about it a little bit. Our goal would be to have, one person in charge of renting the facility and managing that. Renting the facility, it could be, our goal is to be able to have, most everything remote, as far as unlocking and locking doors. And as far as like renting, I guess more in detail, Jim, your question, like what's it look like what were you referring to in that question?
So one of the things that we talked about as a board going into this is like who gets first dibs on renting this building? Okay, all these churches being out here and available and all this kind of stuff. And the one thing I think I said very passionately in a meeting was the people that bring us here are going to be the people that have first dibs to rent this building. Or not necessarily, this isn't going to be open for just anybody to have a $5,000 event venue place that takes away from the community aspect of the school and the churches that are supporting the school. So, as we start to reach out for, for funding and that kind of stuff, like, I don't think we're going to keep track necessarily of like, oh, this church over here gave us so much. We're just saying that those that are supporting the school, sending kids there, those that are being actively supported, we would see as having first dibs to use the building for the various venues we have envisioned. Like Eric said, weddings, maybe reunions. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, but I think is a need in this valley, is we have a lot of small independent churches. Not many churches that are more than like 2 or 3 congregations strong in the valley here. And if they want to host, like, say, a meeting that's exceeds the capacity of their current building or just doesn't even have a kitchen or something in it, that is like one of the goals here, is to provide that facility to the churches that they can use to host larger events in the area.
Did the possibility of renting the facility influence the design?
Yes and no. The design was influenced more probably from the fact that from the very beginning, we've had 2 schools that are kind of been advisory schools to us. One of them was Reach Christian School in Lebanon County, and the other was Ephrata down there in Lancaster County. Ephrata built a new school a couple of years ago. And if you took a look at our building and Ephrata's building, you would see that it's a mini Ephrata. They have, how many thousand square feet do they have? It's incredible. Like, they have their building's easily twice or 3 times the size of ours. Their building was built for rental, so having restrooms inside of the gym area, being able to lock the school area away from the gym for that kind of stuff. Yes, those designs were influenced. If you look on your prints, you'll have the kind of the kitchen in the back there in the gym, but you also have kind of that eating area off to the side. A lot of that was born out of the rental community side of things. And once again, that gym almost mirrors Ephrata's, just it's a little bit smaller.
All right. Summarizing the question, is there any thought in the current design talks about going 2 stories versus 1? Get that right, Dan?
I mean, I'll start, I guess, with the first part of the question. Jim, follow me up. Yeah, there was some thought put into it. I mean, we looked at, what's the demand look like for this school, in 10 years or whatever. In answer to your question, could we just go full 2-story right now? Sure. I guess part of my thought process was, how big of a project initially can the community swing. I mean, if we know that we have the funding, and we're able to build it maybe a little bigger, I'm not saying that's an impossibility. I think our thought process was maybe initially here to, is $7 million going to scare people off, or if we go full blown $20 million, that's a lot bigger pill to swallow for the local community.
So if you look at the prints, you're going to see a second story of 3,000 square feet there. You'll see there are no bathrooms up there, and there's no really official classrooms up there. So anything over 3,000 square foot in a second story takes an elevator that goes to ADA code and all of that kind of stuff. And so Ephrata has that. Ephrata has the 2 stories that you're talking about. They have much wider halls than we do. They've got this great big, really nice entrance with an elevator and all of that kind of stuff. But we were told that elevator alone is $100,000. So just there's no getting around it. That elevator is going to be $100,000. And one of the issues that we faced in design, in the early conceptual design, is how do you get a gym big enough to meet the needs of the community and not make the front of the school look like it's just this little, shall we say, postage house at the end of this gym. So that 3,000 square foot of second story and that elevated roof line gives you that nice entrance, gives you the ability to have a covered entrance if you like. And to our understanding and talking to builders, keeps us out of that elevator space.
How big does the school need to be, Dan? How many students?
All right, the question is there a cost? What is the cost? And has it been explored building the building such that a second story could be added on down the road?
I don't think we've necessarily thought about that from the standpoint of what would need to be done. One thing that Frederick and Seibert told us as we were walking the land was, they said because of the size of the building already, we'll need to do something called geotech. And I was like, I've been in the construction industry for a long time. I'm like, what's geotech? And they're like, expect it be $20,000, $30,000 just for geotech. Geotech is actually bringing out drill rigs and drilling down through the rock formation for 20 or 30 feet to check the stability of the soil underneath. And so to answer your question, yeah, it's probably going to be pretty easy to engineer the footers if we wanted to go up the second story. It's a valid question. Thank you. It's something that, we'll definitely talk about and entertain.
James, can you go back to that slide?
So the question is, since the lot is long and narrow, what led the engineer to front face the building towards the road?
So, I mean, I think, like, you're wondering why it's positioned, how it's currently positioned? Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying there. Like I said, this is a super conceptual plan. Yeah, the overall site plan here that you're looking at really wasn't tied together with the building drawings in thinking through, adding on down the road. Initially, the building was kind of situated there just due to the lay of the land and how the contour of the land was. So, yeah, that as a concept is pretty much just is what it is. It's nothing. We didn't really think through a placement of like the playground being in the way of potential addition or something like that.
This is purely the first draft. We went to Frederick and Seibert and said, we need something on paper. We need an idea. We need somewhere to start. This is what they gave us. So there'll be a couple more iterations coming before that happens. And just a side note, tell all your kids that SWM stands for Stormwater Management, not swimming pools. We already heard some of that in the back. They're like, oh man, we're getting swimming pools here.
It's for the upward swim team. So I don't know if I can ask you guys a question. So I'm hearing, talking about a larger building. Like, does a building plan, does $7 million look like too big of a number, or is that? What's your thoughts, Dan?
Dell must have made a really good presentation on the numbers. I anticipated the numbers being what we're talking about, and here we are talking about how we're going to make this building bigger. So that's incredible.
We expected the guy in the crowd that just said, "This is crazy. You can't do this," and then we got Dan.
Franklin County versus Lancaster. Dan, what is the enrollment at Shalom this year? Okay. Would you have any idea what number, like how that would split between, like the supporting conference churches and the Anabaptist churches that support that versus just being a private school with a lot of with a high academic standard and a good reputation?
Is there any supporting churches? I would have to ask that question. My guess would be very few. I don't know.
The reason for my question is try to gauge, like, at what point does the valley do we hit a ceiling on the number of students that we're going to have? And so even if we hark back to Shalom and we use Grand Point and King Street and we add them in, are we at 300 of the 650? You know, of the 350 that were there. So I just don't know. One of the things that was floated on the board was if we go over 250 here, maybe it's time for a second campus to the south towards Hagerstown or someplace like that in the future. Like how far around are we going to pull people from to upward? And so some of those conversations is kind of how we ended up at 225. I think one of the other things that happened at 225 was we just said in the beginning days as we were looking at this, like if we get to 120, wow, okay, let's double that number, okay? And that's kind of how we ended up where we're at.
Any more questions from the audience? Dean? Have we explored any grants for this project?
We have not. It is on the to-do list. I don't really know. We know some exist. For instance, playground equipment. There's a lot of grants out for things like that. Anything that falls under ADA. There's a lot of things that kind of fall under that. But for the actual building itself, it's going to be relatively hard to find from what I've heard and what I've heard from other people.
I'm going to give you three gentlemen just a few minutes for some last comments, but in the meantime, we'll take any more questions from the audience at this point.
Yeah, we had ran some numbers on that. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I hear you. We're seeing that already with the grade sizes. So one of the first things we saw with this drawing was it would be nice to have some varying size classrooms. You see a little bit of that. I believe there's a few rooms there listed as like tutor rooms that are smaller. We would want some more variation for sure to happen there. But yeah, these would be wonderful problems to have.
Thank you.
Then you have to find teachers for all of that second campus and another administrator. I think you lose your vision more. I think you'll start losing your vision if you're your second campus. So if you're spending $7 million over there and $7 million over there, it'll be $10 million over there now. Because it's so many years down the road to put your
I think that's a point that multiple people have made to me here recently, and I think the teacher one's actually the one that hits home the most. When we're out looking for teachers and we're kind of in a competitive space there, it's kind of cutthroat. It's unbelievable. If there's a good candidate coming out of a school somewhere, a Bible school, etc., it's cutthroat to get them. And if you don't know who's coming back by January, you're already behind behind in the game of getting those. And so that strikes home. If we want some of the best teaching staff, the best teachers, why would we go to another campus and split that? So noted.
All right, the question is, can we make walls flexible to flex the building for class size, additional classes?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. We have a lot of that going on at Mount Rock right now with that, and the biggest thing is just the noise, and you run into that. I do think it would be valuable to have in certain pockets of the school where we could divide this up. Maybe the tutor rooms can be open, maybe they can be closed, somewhere where you're not housing a full grade. But man, yeah, if you're next to the kindergarten room or the first and second grade room, I'd prefer it to be an insulated wall for sure.
Thank you, Zane. We appreciate the feedback. Back to the question of classroom size. So our church meets, the church that I attend meets in Shalom right now. And so we have Sunday school in some of the school classrooms. And most of the classroom sizes on this drawing are based off of the sizes that we see at Shalom. And how many people here are familiar or have been in the New Horizons building in Hagerstown? Like, how many people have been in that building? Quite a few people. Sizes are very similar there as well. That 475 to 500 square foot is a pretty standard classroom size in Ephrata, Shalom, and New Horizons.
Any other questions?
The comment has been made, our private schools are overflowing because the public schools are so bad, not because people are interested in Christian education. And I think when we keep that in mind and take this vision to the community, I think the 7 million is going to look pretty small.
Thank you, Dean.
There would be a cap out number at some point per teacher. A model, once again, that'd be a great problem to have for us. Right now, we're just trying to get each class isolated with a teacher, getting the combo classes split apart. If we get to the point where we get to a certain number, the first step I would look at taking is just putting a full-time aide along with a teacher. I know there's quite a few schools that do that out in Lancaster. They can go to 25 students, 30 students when you have two kind of teachers in the same room, and it does a little better for teacher training and breaking apart for reading groups and things. We could get way into the weeds on that, but at some point you would definitely think about that. But at the moment, we don't have any classes at even 15, and I would really think about splitting classes in the elementary if you're getting to 18 or 20, probably. So I would say we're maybe a few years out on that yet.
I was just gonna say, ask this, if Dale, you shared a lot of numbers, breakdown of what those numbers look like. I don't know if maybe this is just me. I wasn't able to get all of them quick enough and remember them for that matter. Is that something you'd be able to share, some of those numbers, a breakdown of what some of that would look like?
Yeah, I think we can do that. We were a bit cautioned on putting a lot of those numbers on paper, because right now it's a bit fuzzy. But as they become more defined, I think the intent is to keep the patrons, the community informed of where we're at.
Back to that number, the 2.5 that we need to raise, say for the 30% at least to be able to start the project. If you're breaking that down, we need 25 people with $100,000. Is that right, math? Yeah, that's right. We need 25 people with 100 grand, or we need 50 people with 50 grand. So if you break it down that way, like as you look around your own circles, like could you raise 50 grand? Could I raise 100 grand? You start looking at that, and that's when I think the number starts to look a little smaller. Like as all of us reach into our inner circles, our network of relationships that we have, that's when that number starts to look a little smaller. And I mean, I don't know. From the feedback I'm getting tonight, let's put a second story on and go for 12 million.
And so I would like to make a plea that for the land, we need about 300 to 330,000 to close this, and would need another 100,000 to really begin to work on like the land development plans and building prints in earnest, which is something that takes time. So if we farther break that down into the 400,000 range, like how many people do we know who could donate 5,000 to the project? Is kind of the way I would look at it. And how quickly can we get to 400,000? To me, that's the first step. Is let's get the land under our belt, and let's get to where we can like comfortably spend money on, real prints and real land development drawings, and bring in some of these ideas that are coming out and begin to like draw from the community the ideas that we can like put to paper. And I'm sure this is not going to be the only information meeting about this. We're not going to leave here and never talk to you guys again, that's for sure.
And that is the November 15th date.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, all of y'all have envelopes here tonight. I got 500 of them printed. All of you take a handful. It has Dell's address on it. So if Dell calls me November 16 and says, hey, I have $3 million laying in my mailbox, what do I need to do with it? We'll have another meeting, and that's real feedback. So, but seriously, appreciate everybody coming out and showing the interest. But yeah, like as Dell said, the November 15 for the December settlement is a hard date that we're next facing here for the land, and the building thing. To get that started, it's going to take money. Like I said earlier, permitting and all of that stuff sometimes can take better part of a year, and we are working with Green Township. So till we get worked through all of that, obviously that takes money, but it also takes time. So if we can have that money sooner rather than later to get that process started, maybe we get all the long tenured stuff out of the way, and then we're just waiting on actually getting the building up. So yeah.
Seriously, I want to say thank you to everybody that's here, and to the greater community that's going to see this video on our website, for the financial support that you've given to us getting started already. I remember this is a board meeting, I don't know, way back at the beginning of maybe year one or even a little bit before that. We were reaching out to some organization, and somebody said to one of the board members from outside the area, oh, you're running a Christian school, you're always going to be in the red. It's just how it happens, okay? But thanks to the community participation in this, we have been very well funded. the treasurer has never had to worry about whether he's going to have stuff to pay teachers or, or take care of the needs at hand. And so we really appreciate that. We appreciate the support that we have gotten, and we support. We also, I want to call out the fundraising committee. Some of you guys are here tonight. You guys are doing an awesome job. You're working really hard on the behalf of the school, and we really appreciate it. If you don't feel like giving money to Dell or to us, find those guys. They'll take it gladly for you.
All right, that was Jim's ending comments. Eric?
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Jim said on thank you. I view you guys putting aside a busy schedule and being here as some of maybe the ambitious believers. Perhaps I'll have to go home and think about some of the comments that have been made on if we didn't dream big enough. I thought I was dreaming pretty big, but seriously, it's going to take a community to do this. To run a school, it takes a community, and I feel a significant change even in year 2 of how much more involved the community has been at school, whether it's someone's grandma coming to help clean the school, or whether it's moms picking up a sub opportunity because a teacher called off sick. Just little things. We know we don't have a long track record, and we just appreciate the community buying in and being supportive. And if we're going to dream like this and pull something like this off, we're going to need you guys. So there's packets in the back, there's envelopes. Spread the word. You guys clearly believe in this maybe more than I do. So spread the word and encourage others to get on board and join in some way. I think the more hands on deck, the easier it gets. So thank you for being here, and please spread the word.
All right, Marlon, any closing comments?
Well, he left me to go last, so they all said what I would have said. But no, just again, thanking all of you all for the support and trusting, the staff that we have at the school for your kids. And I've heard, at a board level, this teacher was like, hey, does Upward have any openings for teaching? And we've had a few teachers reach out about possible opportunities. And I haven't been on the board super long, or I'm new to a Christian school, but everything I hear about Christian schools is it's hard to find staff. But I feel like if you have teachers reaching out, wondering if they can help, that's a credit to you guys and spreading the word of how well the school's actually going. So, yeah, just thanks again. Be in prayer for support for the land purchase, and I know we've said it 10 times, but it's November 15 is the date on your envelopes. And just as we move forward and continue to build the vision, the quote I put on the slide there, alone we can dream, together we can build. I think that's very true of this project. Us sitting here in a boardroom, we can dream about what this might look like, but it's up to you guys and the greater community to actually build this. Not only build the building, but build the community and build the support and the functionality of Upward. So thank you.
All right, just as we close, the verse from Psalm 127, verse 1, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. So before we depart tonight, let's all stand. We're going to just thank the Lord for their time together here and his blessing on the future. Father God, we thank you. Thank you for your presence here with us this evening. We thank you for your guidance to this point in the life of the Upward School. We thank you for each of the families who are represented here, the families who are represented in the school, the children. Lord, we desire that you would continue to guide us and direct us for the upbuilding of your kingdom through education to the children who are coming to school there. We pray that you would bless the board, the staff, all, Lord, with wisdom from on high, wisdom that only you can give us. Lord, as we read from your word, that we can make plans, but only you can direct our steps. And as we continue the planning efforts, Lord, we just pray that you would continue to guide us as we take one step at a time. And we just trust you for your wisdom and your guidance. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You are dismissed. Thank you for coming.